In this episode, I talked to Samantha Shank, the founder of Learn and Color. She shared her inspiring journey as a teen entrepreneur and digital nomad. She's one of the most curious and adventurous person I have ever met. She has traveled over 20 countries. Yes, many of those were Hispanics. And she shared with me her passion for the student-led learning experiences and how these experiences shaped her life and got her to be bilingual. We will discuss her experience learning Spanish, and she will give us practical advice for parents and teens learning a second language. Make sure you stay until the end for our short Spanish lesson. Bienvenidos to the podcast for Bilingual Mindsets. I am Karim Morato, your host and Spanish language coach. You are in the right place if you want company in your bilingual journey for your family or for yourself. Mi casa es tu casa. ¿Listos? 1, 2, 3. Aquí vamos. Hola Samantha, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien, gracias. I am so excited about our conversation. You don't know this, but I have been stalking you. I don't know if for years or for months.
Oh, no.
I just
Hace
think
mucho
that you have
tiempo.
mucho tiempo. I just think that you have such a interesting life. I don't know how you do it. Obviously you're young and beautiful. You have all this energy, but I remember meeting you in one online conference, and
Yeah,
you were talking there about entrepreneurship. So you
yeah.
got my attention. It's like I went there and then watched your workshop, and I was like, oh my goodness, this lady is amazing. So I can't believe I'm talking to you. Uh,
Thank
but
you.
but one of the things that got my attention, obviously, that's how I met you, was that you started a business when you were a teen. Can you take us back to the stage of your life when you were a teen and you decided, I'm going to start a business? How did that happen? Tell us about the experience. And also, feel free to add the fact that you were Miss Cardinal and
Mhm.
Miss, I want to make sure I say Indiana.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so that's a
Add
lot
that.
to go over.
Well, let's talk about it because I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, so I started homeschooling when I was in third grade, and at the time, I wasn't really learning much in the public school system. I come from a very low income area, and having studied education, I realized that our teachers were incredibly overworked. There was a lot going on with the schools, and I just wasn't really learning or feeling challenged. So my parents didn't know really anything about homeschooling, but we said, hey, we can try it for a year, and if it doesn't work out, we can go back to public school. But I mean, we can at least try it. So we ordered a Becca curriculum, which is the only thing we knew at the time. We're like, okay, let's just try this out. And I ended up really enjoying homeschooling. I really enjoyed the flexibility of it, and I enjoyed being able to finish my work within a few hours and
Uh-huh.
be able to like learn other things with the rest of my day instead of waiting for the rest of the class. Because I tend to be a very fast learner and I enjoy being able to work things very quickly. Um, and then I've always been really interested in history. So I actually wanted to be a World War II historian for the longest time. I discovered
Wow.
World War II in fourth grade, and from then on, I really like just wanted to study history. And people had told me that I could be like a history teacher, but with history, being a history teacher, you have to teach all of history. You can't just teach like a single part of history. So I decided I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that was for me. At the time, I didn't want to live in a big city, so like Jerusalem or Washington D.C. didn't seem like an option. I live in L.A. now, so that's very ironic. But at the time, everything just seemed really daunting, and that's about the time that I started to learn in color. I was 14 years old, and I just needed a way for me to have like a creative outlet and talk about the things I was interested in. My favorite historical movies, books. Looking back at my older posts, I have posts like called Frugality from the Greatest Generation
Uh-huh.
or 10 World War II heroes. Like they were very history focused. And I started to get an audience from that. I was using social media, and I wasn't expecting this. I just started to gain traction and audience. And then I
Mm-hmm.
became connected with so many amazing bloggers in the educational field, and I realized that I could do this for a living. So I kind of took like the median income of where I was living, which was only like 30 or 40,000. Again, very low income area. And I said, hey, I don't want to become a millionaire or whatever. I just need to be able to support myself on this income. So that's what I started working towards. I started working as a virtual assistant. I was running social media and doing graphic and web design for a lot of other bloggers. They really liked my work, and I was able to grow my business because of them. And because we already had like a working relationship, if ever I had a question about blogging, or one of the bloggers I knew was facing like a devastating business mistake, I was able to learn from them. So I had built-in mentors as well as making money. So that really helped me grow the trajectory of my blog. And then 3 years later, about 2017, I was like making a full-time income. And that's kind of when I knew, hey, this isn't just like an unrealistic dream. This is something that I could actually do for a living.
Wow. So you are a very curious person. I can see that.
Yes.
Because it's almost like it was one curiosity after one curiosity.
Yes.
And I bet you have a lot of mentors because you ask a lot of questions. Now, I have a son that is like you, and he has mentors, and he is into a lot of things because curiosity drives his learning.
Yes. I
And
am a huge... Oh, keep going.
no, I wanted to say that I think somebody asked him what was the best part about homeschooling. He say, it make me curious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but keep going. What were you saying?
Oh, I was going to say one of my favorite quotes is, be curious, read widely. I think what people call intelligence just boils down to curiosity. And like you just mentioned, it started with an interest in World War II, then an interest in business, and then an interest in entrepreneurship, and an interest in blogging. These all are one rabbit trails into the other. This didn't just happen spontaneously or out of the blue. And I think that's one thing public schools are missing, is that chance for students to really explore their passions and interests, especially because in today's changing world, school curriculums just can't keep up with the technology, which is completely normal, just the way the technology is working. But homeschooling really allows us to explore everything we're interested in, even if it's not traditional.
Wow. Now take me to the Miss Cardinal.
Yeah.
How did you
The
end
pageant
up?
part of my life. Yes. So I started doing pageants when I was 16 years old. I did them for 7 or 8 years. And then that's what paid for my undergraduate degree and my master's degree. So the primary reason that I did pageants, I think I won 4 or 5 different titles during that time, was for scholarship money. So I was active in the Miss America organization, which is actually the leading scholarship provider for women in the US.
Oh,
So
wow.
whatever stereotypes you have about pageant women, all the ladies I competed in were incredibly smart, motivated, and we were getting scholarship money. So that's what I used to pay for my undergraduate and my master's degree.
So it seems to me that just like you have opportunities, also you have challenges. And parents, we're going to get to the Spanish learning because I know a lot of you are curious about how you got into Spanish. But let's talk about the challenges that you had, going and trying to take advantage of all those opportunities.
I think finding resources was one of my biggest challenges. I had to get really creative. So, like I said, I grew up in a very small town in the Midwest, and around me, I didn't have the people and the mentors that I was looking for specifically in this niche. So I had to take to
Mhm.
Facebook, which again isn't the most traditional way to network, especially as a 14, 15-year-old, but that's kind of where I found this like very unique community. And
Mhm.
I've noticed that when a lot of people start small businesses, they start with their immediate network, which is their friends and family, etc. At the time, my blog was catered towards homeschool parents, and I didn't really know any homeschool parents in Little Indiana. So I was able
Mhm.
to take to the internet for that. So I think really just getting creative with where you're finding your mentors. We talked about pageants a little bit. I didn't think I would ever be interested in pageants. Pageants aren't something I'm naturally good at. I'm very much a computer nerd and an introvert, and I like being alone and not on stage. But I ended up doing really well in interview, which is how I was able to kind of offset my on stage scores. And that is what kind of helped me in the pageant world. So I think finding your unique interest and finding your unique talents and using them to your advantage, even if it's not a traditional pathway. So, for
Mhm.
example, having really good interview skills and having a business doesn't seem like a natural segue to pageantry, where you think of these girls in bikinis and heels and whatever, but it ended up working out for me. So being able to be flexible and keeping your options open, even if it's not the most traditional pathway.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the fact that you feel you are an introvert, because a
Yeah.
lot of students that are learning Spanish, they consider themselves introvert, and just the fact that they have to speak a foreign language, they feel like, oh no, I am introvert, I don't want to do that. So what advice you will give to an introvert student that is learning Spanish, and it's something that they just the thought about speaking a foreign language, it just kills them.
Yes. I will send you a TED Talk that really helped me out. And in the TED Talk, she talked about two different scenarios. So one person, he spoke English very well, like very fluent. However, he was so shy, he never practiced it, and his English didn't really improve because of that. And she was talking about another shop owner. He spoke extremely broken English, but when you went into his shop, he was so excited to talk to you and welcome you, even though he spoke broken English. For me, I have made so many mistakes in Spanish. They're so embarrassing, but I realized that if I would never have practice, I would have never gotten better. And now that I've made these like mistakes, the word is embedded in my memory forever. And I
Wow.
think that that just comes with the territory. I was in Mexico and I was asked if I had a waiter coming in, and I responded, "Oh yeah, tenemos un camarón, which is shrimp." And he's like, "What in the world are you talking about?" I'm like, "I have a shrimp." He's like, "You have a shrimp?" And I'm like, "I have a shrimp. Tenemos un camarón." And he's like, "Wait, what?" And we just went back and forth for a little bit, and he asked me, "You have a shrimp?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I meant waiter." Okay. um Jabon and sopa. So jabon is soap, but when you're tired, sopa seems like the natural word. So I just remember asking, I'm like, "Oh yeah." In the shop, I'm like, "Oh, tiene sopa." And she goes, "Here." I'm like, that's soup. What are you talking about?" And that's what I said. And it was just like one of those moments he laughed. And I think it really depends on the language too. So I'm Chinese. I was adopted from China, and I had practiced speaking Mandarin. And I
Okay.
think the reception for Mandarin was a little bit different because I look Chinese. I mean, I am Chinese. And when I speak broken Chinese, it makes it look like my parents sent me to Chinese learning school as a child and I didn't pay attention. And it's a little bit more embarrassing. But I think for me with Spanish, like the Latino community is extremely open and they
Oh,
realize like immediately that I'm not a native Spanish speaker and they're amazing. So I think that that's
that
also really is finding like a country that's very welcoming, our language, and the people that's very welcoming.
yes, and thank you for saying that. Because I always tell my students, we love when somebody's trying to speak Spanish. We
Yes.
embrace that.
Yeah.
It's like you are our best friends the moment you start speaking Spanish. So this is
Yes,
great.
that's so true.
Now, I know that I visit your website, and parents are going to be putting her website in the show notes, and make sure to visit. It's just amazing, so vibrant, colorful, and full of life like you. I got to say that.
Thank you.
But you are a big believer of student led learning. How did you develop that philosophy?
I think going back to curiosity, like we were talking earlier. So when I was
Hmm.
younger, I was studying Hebrew and German because as I was studying World War II, that was the most natural languages that would have been useful to me.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
was discouraged from a lot of people. And it was really frustrating, like looking back at it and living in Los Angeles now, because I could tell anyone in Los Angeles, I am learning Krav Maga, I am learning Swedish, and no one would bat an eye. It would not be strange to anyone. And at the time, people really were telling me, you need to learn Spanish. Spanish is the only useful language. And at the time, like in Indiana, there was a very high like Latino population. So yes, that was a useful language. But the vast majority of students that I went to that were in like public high school that took Spanish for several years can't speak any Spanish. And so I'm like, well, the interest wasn't there. Yes, they were getting exposed to it, but just because you learn something in school doesn't mean you automatically learned it. So all of my Spanish knowledge has come post college. We can talk about how I learned it. Yeah, but it did not come from school. So I think that's one thing to know is don't discourage learning. One of my friends out in LA, he is a planetary science for NASA. And I 100% know that if I were to tell somebody I wanted to study the planets for a living in Indiana, I would have been laughed at. ostracized, I would have been very discouraged from that to choose a
Mm-hmm,
more
mm-hmm.
realistic goal. And I think one thing I've learned in the past like 6 years is to surround yourself with people that believe in you and your dreams. And if you're not finding that in your immediate location, that's okay. You might have to move to find that. So I have some friends that are really into theater, and they've had to move to other areas in order to be around people that supported that dream.
That's amazing. And also I think that the fact that you were learning other languages prepare you to when you were going to start learning Spanish. So nothing
I
nothing is wasted. Nothing
I
is wasted.
agree. Yes, and I think
That's
nothing is wasted is such a good point. Like people all the time tell me, "Oh my gosh, my child is interested in he's studying Minecraft or they're interested in dinosaurs and this isn't going to lead anywhere." And know that your child might not end up becoming a dinosaur scientist the rest of his life, but he could be using those research skills in order to help him become a computer engineer or enter law or something. So, yes, nothing is wasted. I absolutely love that.
yes. Now talk to me about you describe yourself as a digital nomad. Can you
Yeah.
explain that lifestyle to me?
It is chaotic. Maybe explain it to me. I don't know what's going on. Yes. So I moved out to California in the beginning of 2022. And since then, I have access to LAX, which is 10 minutes away from my house, which is amazing. And cheap plane tickets compared to where I grew up. And I just like took advantage of that to the fullest extent. And I realized that I was traveling so much and I wasn't really able to afford both my travels and paying rent. So I said, okay, I don't really want to give up the travel, so I'm just going to give up the apartment. Um,
Just
so
like that.
currently, yeah. So currently, I'm kind of living a kind of crazy life. Like you mentioned, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, and I'm just kind of winging life. But I'm basically living out of a storage unit and a backpack right now. So it's ended up working out for me for the past couple of years. I can see myself getting burnt out of it. But for me, like the desire to travel is so strong, and I don't have a ton of money and I don't really want to go into debt. And so I just want to explore as much of the world as I can while I'm young and I have all these amazing opportunities that I'm so grateful for. And I just want to like seize the world by that. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And yeah.
And thank you so much for describing your life because one of the things I tell parents when their kids when they start introducing Spanish to their kids at an early age, I
Mhm.
always tell parents you never know what your kid is gonna do in the future, right? And
Yes.
I just think that you're a perfect example about this,
Yeah.
that we are giving those skills, those human
Mhm.
skills. I always say that Spanish is not a subject, it's a human skill. So we're
Yeah.
giving these skills to our children. And then when they become older, they can become like you, like travelers, right? And they
Yeah.
have those skills to survive
Yes, and
and
I
to
think that that's a
thrive.
really good point. Yes, like the resilience that you need to travel. In Peru, so going back from Cusco, Peru, which is in the middle of nowhere, to Los Angeles was a challenge. I had not showered for 72 hours. I had no clean clothes. So I was brain dead and my flights kept getting delayed, which kept delaying the next flight. And each time it happened, I was having to sleep in the airport. And I could not leave the airport because I was in a secure zone. It was like a catch 22 of terrible situations in one. Um, but in that, like, those are just scenarios when you need to have resilience on you. You need to be able to ground yourself and get in the right headspace and navigate in a foreign language. Like, I speak great Spanish when I have a little tequila in me, when I have no sleep. It's a completely different scenario. Yeah, and I have made Spanish mistakes in the Lima airport. But again, Spanish speakers are so nice. I don't think I've met anyone that's very snooty about like their
Hmm.
language or yeah. And I've heard like
And
really negative things about like French speakers, people going to France and saying, "Oh, you didn't pronounce that right," or pretending not to understand when they can very well understand you. So yeah.
that's great, but I am so glad. Now, let's dive into your Spanish learning experience.
Okay.
Because can you take me back to the moment where you have the clarity and say, I need to learn Spanish? When did that happen?
Each year I set a goal, like a New Year's resolution. And in 2020, before quarantine and all, my goal was to learn Spanish. My goal was to have a 30-minute conversation. It said it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't need to be fluent. I just need to be
Mm,
able to have a 30-minute conversation. And I
wow.
started with a program called Baselang. At the time, most of their tutors were out of Colombia. And I was speaking with a native Spanish speaker every single day for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on my schedule. But I think it was that consistency. And it was so fun to go from Hola, me llamo Samantha or something to actually going Hola, me llamo Samantha, soy de Estados Unidos, tengo 20 whatever años. And it was fun to see my progress and how I was able to slightly grow and slightly talk more. And it was in August when I realized that instead of just like the introductions we had, the entire class period had gone by and I had a 30-minute conversation in only Spanish. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and I think with that, it really just took consistency. I have a lot of friends that use Duolingo. I love Duolingo. I think it's a great program, but it's not going to get you fluent just because base slang really prioritizes conversation. Um, I think Duolingo is good for learning vocabulary, but I mean, Juan Come Pan doesn't really tell you much about the world.
But thank you so much for saying that because when parents come to me and say I want to learn Spanish, I have a Spanish program for elementary ages. I talk about methodology. I think that you decided I'm going to learn Spanish. I love that you say all I want is to speak 30 minutes for 30
Yeah,
minutes,
it was a very
and
doable goal.
yes. And also, I love that you say, let me find a methodology, something that works for me. And I think that sometimes if you start doing something that does not work for you, you're not going to do it. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I like that you say 30 minutes and consistency. So, parents, students that are listening, please. I sound like a broken record every time I say it, but I love when you say it. And now, did you ever feel like you wanted to quit? There were some times that you were like, okay, this is not for me. I'm quitting.
Yes, there were a couple times subjunctive past tense when I'm like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with this language? Who invented these conjugations? But one thing I think that helped is I was taking progress videos every few weeks. If you go through the archives, it's
Oh.
on the internet somewhere. But it was really fun when I was having meltdowns and thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm not learning anything. I'm not progressing." I was able to actually see myself progress in Spanish, which I think was really cool. And I think like whenever you are feeling like you're not progressing in something, I think taking progress videos, you don't have to post them, you don't have to be showy, but having like those
Mm.
for referencing yourself is really helpful. I know people with who have weight loss goals and seeing pictures of not just how they look physically, but the way they're doing certain movements. When you're doing a push up, going from like a small like baby push up to like a full blown military push up, it's really exciting to see. And that physical change that you're physically seeing is really undeniable. So I think those are really good motivators, and just having a motivator outside of yourself. So, for example, if your only motivation is mom yelling at you, that might not get you very far. But if your motivation is to travel to Mexico someday or to celebrate Dia de los Muertos in the Hispanic part of town or to order at a restaurant, those are really doable and achievable goals.
Wow. I just love the idea of the videos. We were talking with a mom 2 weeks ago because she was saying, how did I know the kids are progressing? And I say to her,
Mm,
on Friday, make them practice and record the video so the kids can see
yeah,
each other, can see themselves that. But I do think that what you just say, it's amazing if you are studying Spanish and you say, well, on Friday, I'm going to take a progress video and I'm going to say
yeah,
something in Spanish. It's like a
yeah.
diary. I love that. Love it, love it, love it.
Yes, like
Thank
a
you so
diary.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Samantha. This is so, oh my gosh, I love that idea. Now, you travel to 19 countries, right? At this
Mhm.
point.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. How learning how to speak Spanish make you decide I'm going to Mexico and Peru?
Yes. So I mainly started traveling when I moved to California just because I didn't really have access to a good airport back where I was living in Indiana. Um, so I have backpacked both Latin America and Asia. And so that was another way I was able to afford travels because traveling from Los Angeles to Peru to Los Angeles to Ecuador to Los Angeles to Guatemala is really expensive. But if you're doing them all in one big trip, it's significantly cheaper, especially if you have like the time to do it. So if you have like,
Oh, so you went to Guatemala and Ecuador too?
yeah.
Okay, wow. So how many countries have you gone from the
Oh my
Hispanic world?
gosh. I think it's 20. Oh, in the Hispanic world,
Ecuador,
um,
Guatemala, Peru, Mexico.
Colombia,
Oh,
Belize.
Colombia, Belize.
Hmm. Six,
Oh,
six, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Belize used to be part of from Guatemala, but then somebody sold it.
Yeah.
No, let's not talk about politics here.
Yes. I did like Guatemala more than Belize. I didn't love Belize, so that's
Oh, thank you so much. So you got to try the frijoles, tortillas,
Oh, sí,
tamales.
sí, por supuesto, sí.
Oh, wow.
So
So
yeah,
how?
Guatemala is actually one of my favorite countries.
Oh, I am from
Are you from
Guatemala.
Guatemala? Okay, I thought you were
Yes,
from Guatemala. Okay, yeah.
I am from Guatemala, so I'm being biased. Well, my husband
Yeah.
is from Bolivia. He's
Okay.
from Bolivia, Cochabamba. But yes, I grew up in Guatemala, and it's a beautiful, heavenly country. Love it, love
What
it.
part?
From the city, from the city.
Okay.
But so going back to the part where you speak Spanish, how that make you gave you the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to go and explore the Latin world.
Um, First, I am never going to see the people I speak to again, which is great if I mess up. So if I accidentally swear at you and say um another word instead of años or something like that, I am not going to see this person again. And I think honestly, like that mindset has helped me a lot. It's like, you know what? I might look stupid, but it's okay. I'm a gringa. Está bien. And for Guatemalans were some of the nicest people. Guatemala was actually one of the very few countries I have not been catcalled in, which I was like very surprised at that. Um, just like not surprised at Guatemala in particular, but just I was catcalled quite a bit in Latin America. But Guatemalans, I've had the best experience there. I've been there twice, and
Mm.
yeah, I feel like their accent is very neutral. So when I was choosing countries, I was also choosing accents that were very neutral. So I started learning with Colombian Spanish, and I've noticed Peru, Guatemala, like the accents are very neutral. Whereas if I would have started with Uruguay or Argentina or Chile, I think I would have had a rougher journey with learning Spanish, and I still can't
Mhm.
really understand those accents very well. It's one thing I'm working on right now.
Are you
So I think
are you planning to go to Spain?
yes. I have a friend in Barcelona who's living there for a year, and he said, "Buy a plane ticket, and you can stay with me." So we just need to coordinate that with before he leaves Barcelona. But tickets to Latin America from Los Angeles are pretty budget friendly, and the way I choose my destinations is usually by the price of the plane tickets because I can usually find
Mm.
accommodations for very affordable. In the next coming weeks, my friends and I were planning on going to Mexico and Brazil, but then the tickets to Brazil ended up being way too expensive. So we're just going to be spending about 3 weeks in Mexico. So I'm really excited to explore different parts that
Wow.
I've never seen before.
Tell us about your biggest takeaway from these different countries that you have been in the Hispanic world. From somebody that maybe never have traveled to a Hispanic world, what things did you learn about the culture that you are like, okay, I'm taking note of this?
Yeah, so I think one thing that was helpful was Spanish was the unifying language in all of these countries. And in countries like Belize, they speak English, which was helpful. Whereas when I was backpacking Asia, Malaysia, Japan, Korea, each country was completely different. Each one has its own culture, and the cultural norms in Malaysia and Japan are completely different, even though they're very close to each other geographically. So I think that was
Hmm.
one of the benefits of Latin America. But even in there, there's so much history, and I was learning about so much of the history of Latin America. I hate how American textbooks are so American focused, which I guess makes sense. But there's so much more of the world than just the United States. And
Hmm.
like one of the things I really enjoyed, like I was talking about the cat calling, I was learning about the Asian influences in different Latin American countries. So in Peru, there's many chifas, which are Chinese restaurants. And I was so shocked to see so many Asian people in
Wow.
Lima and Mexico City, and just finding this niche of Asian people that speak Spanish was so eye-opening for me, and it was so inspiring to see people that looked like me also speak this
Oh.
third language, even if it's kind of broken. And I don't know, that's one thing I loved about it. And I was able to learn about, okay, so Koreans came here after the Korean War, and that's why there's a Korean population here. I was able to learn all these things about the history, and then this is why this is, and this is why we have cocoa. I don't know, I just love the history of it, and Latinos are so proud of their culture and their history, and that's one thing I've learned. I've loved learning about the culture, and I think that you can't learn about Latin culture without knowing some Spanish. So I think that was one of the benefits of it. When I was backpacking Asia, I don't speak any Asian languages, and I felt like I didn't get to know the people as well just because there was a language
Mm.
barrier. I don't think it was anyone's fault. I just think it was just the nature of that. In Peru, I was in a couple different very tiny villages, cities, and with a lot of people that did not speak English, and I was able to talk to them, which was so fun. And I don't think I wouldn't have been able to have those experiences if I only spoke English.
That's good. So, bottom line is learning languages connect you to people. And I think
Yes.
that and I
Yes.
love that you're saying it's the unifying. Sometimes I hear comments like, "Oh my goodness, if we speak different languages, that will divide us," which sounds like a very ignorant comment, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that I say no. When you speak more languages, you are able to unify with more people. You are able to
Yeah.
connect with more people, to communicate with more people. So, what about
Exactly.
the food? What was your favorite food?
Oh my goodness. There was fried chicken in Guatemala. So the first time I went, I did not get this fried chicken. I was very upset at myself.
Pollo campero.
Like and when I went back, I ate it like 4 times because I just love fried chicken. I don't even really like fried chicken. I just liked their fried chicken. It was amazing.
Well,
Um
it's a famous chicken that when you go to the airport, it smells to a pollo campero because everybody buys pollo campero and they take it back home.
yeah, so that was amazing. Oh my goodness. Um
But also,
There was one place in Mexico, in like La Ciudad de Mexico. It was multiple different types of tacos. So we tried taco de ojo, taco de lengua. Those were
wow,
very interesting. A lot of the tacos were really good, but the taco de ojo, it was literally eyes. It like tasted how you would think an eye would taste like, and I wasn't a fan of that one. But the other ones were very good. It was like featured on a Netflix documentary or something. Like, yeah, I plan on going back there.
wow. No, I know that you went to Machu Picchu. How was that
Yeah.
experience going to Machu Picchu?
So I almost was not going to go to Machu Picchu because it was kind of expensive, and I really was enjoying Lima. I was staying with a host family, and I absolutely loved her, and I really liked the people that I was with in the city. But I was so close to it, and I said, you know what? You're going to regret not going to Machu Picchu. I went, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. I was so
Hmm.
happy. I almost started crying when I saw Machu Picchu, and I'm not that way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely incredible. So yeah, I loved Machu Picchu. I was off. I think I was there during the more rainy season, so there wasn't that touristy.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
um, for example, I was staying in a hostel, and my hostel only had 3 or 4 people in it. It wasn't that crowded, which was really nice. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I love Machu Picchu. And then I visited Huaraz, and I was able to visit like this lake. I almost died from the altitude on there, but I survived. So I absolutely love that. Like that's one of the hidden gems of Peru, and I could have stayed in Peru many more months because I didn't even get to go to a lot of the popular touristy destinations.
Wow. I'm gonna tell you something. You are brave and adventurous. This is
Brave or stupid, I don't
amazing.
know.
Wow, Samantha. But now before we go into the next point of your adventures, why you don't give some advice to my students that are learning Spanish? They are teenagers. They're taking Spanish 1, 2, and 3, maybe some of them, and maybe studying Spanish is hard because you need to study a lot of grammar. What advice, what tips can you give them, or words of encouragement?
I would say start doing things that are useful to you like right now. So or start applying that to the real world. So for
Mhm.
example, I was fully immersing myself in Spanish at the time. I was watching a lot of telenovas. I was listening to a lot of Spanish music. I picked up a lot of interesting vocabulary words from Spanish music. But I think being able to apply it in real life was amazing. And then even being able to order at a taco truck or a Mexican restaurant is really helpful and will boost your confidence, even if it's just tienes carne asada. It's like very simple, it's 3 words. I remember the very first time I ordered in a Mexican restaurant. I was with my friend who was a native Spanish speaker. I was very shy at the time. I've gotten a lot more outgoing because I'm solo traveling now and have learned to chill. But at the time, I was so nervous, and I had the menu in my hand. And my friend orders in perfect fluent Spanish, and he comes to me and he's like, "Okay, what do you want? Like, what do you want to drink?" I had the menu in front of my face, and I said, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "I literally cannot hear you." And I'm like, "Quiero agua." He's like, I still can't hear you." I'm like, "Quiero agua." He's like, "Okay." But it was so funny. And it's just those scenarios, like you have to, yeah, you just have to get through the embarrassment. It is embarrassing. But
So
like I
you're
said, like just keep going.
yeah, so what you're saying is these are the years that you need to build your confidence. Like
Yes.
build confidence and don't
Yeah.
worry about mistakes. Just keep going. What about the
Yes.
parents that are teaching Spanish? I have many families that the parents are doing a lot of things. They're working parents. They have a
Yeah.
lot of things to do and they are teaching Spanish to their young children.
Yes.
What would you say to those parents about starting early and sometimes maybe saying like, okay, forget Spanish, we don't have time? What would you want to say to those parents?
Oh, I would talk about the benefits of being bilingual. Like there are so many different benefits of being bilingual. And from travel, I've learned that, as you know, Americans are some of the least bilingual people in the world, which is insane to me. Um, that there's like just so many benefits to it. And you can start by incorporating simple things into your house. So for example, if you're cooking, you can like, okay, like cocino pasta. I don't know
Hmm.
what you're cooking, but
The
you can
food.
incorporate those. Yeah, you can incorporate like
Whatever,
those simple words in your vocabulary.
yeah, whatever you're cooking, learn those words, how to say them in Spanish.
Yeah. Or
I
like
love
clean up the
that.
dishes, like limpia los platos. Like just incorporate those like small phrases throughout your day, and
Well,
you don't
I
have to
got
start big.
Samantha, the kids are not gonna love you that you're teaching the parents. Tell the parents, learn how to tell the shorts in Spanish.
Yes, wash the
Limpia,
dishes, clean the fridge.
lava. I love it, love it, love it. Now let's
Yeah.
go to the other adventure that you're doing, which I saw you. I
Uh-huh.
told you I'm stalking you. You're learning how to dance Latin music. Tell
Yeah.
me more about it.
Some of my friends have called me an honorary Latina, and I'm like, oh, really? Yes, but I love bachata and salsa. So I actually discovered it in Los Angeles for like a week, and then I was supposed to go to Mexico City, and I fell in love with it in Mexico City. So in Mexico City, we met a Japanese guy who started a bachata and salsa school in a Korean restaurant in Mexico
In,
City, in
in
Mexico.
Mexico.
In Mexico. And it completely blew my mind. Like the multiculturalism just blew my mind. And in there, we found
Mhm.
an Asian community in the bachata scene like in Mexico, and it was like so wild to me. And that's kind of where my friends and I fell in love with bachata and later salsa, and we're starting to learn a little bit of cumbia. It's going. But yeah, and then like I said, like the Latin community has been very welcoming and open. And then I went back to Los Angeles and started taking classes. And then when I leave in a week, I plan on taking a lot of different private lessons in Mexico. So I'm really excited to improve my dancing skills. I'm not usually a dancer. I don't leave the computer very often. But dance has been a really great way for me to like make new friends in Los Angeles, meet new people, and move my body and exercise because I don't do that
Well,
usually.
listen, I have a confession to make. So when I was in
Really?
college, I told you listen, I was in college and I told my husband I want an easy class. I was taking like 18 credits. And I
Okay.
told him I want an easy class, something that I can just show up and pass and get an A. So there was a salsa class and I enrolled in the salsa class. But listen, it was so difficult that I was failing. I was
No, not
failing.
feeling salsa.
And my husband kept telling me, are you sure, Karim? This is difficult. It's not easy. You have never danced. And the teacher was so mean. I tell you, I got
Oh
traumatized. But it was a fun class. There were kids that were like 20. There were some students that were 60, 65, and
no.
these were the bright students. They were the one passing the class. So good. But
They had
I
time to
ended up drop
practice.
listen, I dropped the class. It's like there is no way I'm gonna go in history saying that my first F was because of a salsa class.
Oh
So
no.
I don't know. So I admire what you're doing, learning how to
Oh,
dance. Because
bachata is easier than salsa.
oh, really? Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for the tip. But dancing is something that is in a lot of homes, in Latino homes. So even
Yeah.
we dance when we get together for birthdays, for fiestas. So dancing is something that is brings life into gatherings. So I
Yeah.
admire you for doing that, and congratulations about that. Oh
Oh,
my
thank
goodness.
you.
But let's talk about what you are doing in your educational site. It's called Learn and Color. I love
Mhm.
reading one of the blogs that you had about diverse books from diverse libraries. How does
Yeah.
your multicultural background perspective influence your educational approach and content creation? Because you are so creative. Again, parents, you need to go visit that website and see what she has there. So talk to me more about that.
Yeah, I really believe that it's important not only for kids to see themselves in books, but I think it's really important for people to learn about other cultures. And no matter what culture you're from, no matter what you identify as, there's always something for you to learn. One of my favorite posts on my blog is that pick the 40 multicultural books for diverse libraries. And I love that series just because you could come from a very disadvantaged background in the United States, but there's always something to learn from other people. And in that list, I have a lot of different physical abilities. I have a lot of stories from different cultures and just different perspectives of the world. And I think that it's so important and it helps build empathy when you can hear the story about a girl who is blind and who needs help navigating the world. And you might have a little bit more sympathy for accessibility in the United States or accessibility in your hometown. It doesn't even have to be as big as the world. It can just be as simple as your community. And maybe when you see something that is advocating for accessibility um, in business and commerce and in your city planning, you can say, oh, hey, I read a book about this little girl in a wheelchair
Mm,
or who was deaf or who was blind. And I'd like to incorporate these things in my community. This is something we can all advocate for. And this is all something that can help us as a world. So I think building empathy is the kind of the purpose of that. And then, like I said, I was adopted and I grew up in a very white area of the Midwest. And I didn't have any Asian friends until I actually moved out to California. There was no Asians
oh,
to be friends
wow.
with in Indiana.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't think that diversity representation mattered that much to me. But looking back at it, the majority of influencers I followed were Asian and Chinese, and the majority of like media, like that was my favorite, was very Chinese or Asian. And I've realized now that yeah, like it's just so important to see yourself representative in those things. So
So you, so
that's
you
kind of what I'm here
inside
to
of,
advocate for.
so inside of you, you were craving for that connection.
Yes, I did not realize it at the time, but 100% yes. And out here in
Wow.
Los Angeles, the vast majority of my friends are Asian, and there's just so many little things that I didn't think mattered. They just seem so small, but I love not feeling like an other. I love feeling like I belong, and I love feeling that I'm just like a normal human here. I'm not just like, oh, the one Asian girl, the one like token Asian person in this
Mm,
scenario. I'm just one of 11 million people in this city that are diverse from all over the world. It's not weird that I speak Spanish and not Mandarin. It's just part of Los Angeles. That's one thing that I really enjoy about the city.
so when parents visit your website, what can they find there?
They could find a variety of different teaching materials, primarily for grades 4 through 8, but I have a little bit of everything. And a lot of it is just things that I have learned from my educational experiences when I was a student and beyond. And I have a lot of ways to help students create student-led learning, and like I have provided a lot of rabbit trails. So in a lot of my movie guides, I have a lot of movie guides. So for example, if we're taking a movie like The Greatest Showman or Hidden Figures and making it educational, a lot of those resources are not going to pigeonhole you. I do not have a lot of multiple choice assessments. I have a lot of discussion questions, and these discussion questions are
Mm.
meant to cause discussion and think, okay, how does this movie apply to your own life? How does the perseverance that this character showed, how can you use that perseverance in your daily life? Um, I
Mm.
try to incorporate those things in there.
That sounds great. That sounds amazing because it's making that educational experience real
Yeah,
and authentic. And I think that our kids crave for that. That's when they are like, okay, I will do it because it matters. Like, I don't know,
exactly.
but my kids ask me a lot about why this? Why?
Exactly.
And if I
Yeah.
don't give them a strong why, the interest is not going to be there. So thank you so much for doing that and for channeling all your creativity and energy and experiences into those educational resources. So parents, make sure to check it out. As we wrap this out, how my audience can connect with you and stalk you like the way I do. Like, where is she right now? It's like, what
They
is
should
she
be asking you this
doing?
question. I'm just kidding.
Yes, you're traveling for me because I am learning how to travel. I'm gonna tell you that.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that I'm doing right now that are forcing me to travel. So I'm learning to be
Yeah.
that way. But how parents can connect with you and all students or my followers?
Yeah. So my website is called learnincolor.com, and I am on social media as Learn in Color. I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. And then my personal Instagram, if you're like Karim and you want to follow my personal adventures, is Samantha Lee Li Shank. So that's where I share my bachata videos and my travel videos more than my business page.
Okay, perfect. Now, Samantha, now we're gonna do the best part of the show, which is we're gonna practice some Spanish. And
Okay.
can you help my students and family three questions or phrases that are useful when you are traveling in a Hispanic country?
From my experience in a lot of Hispanic countries, they speak a little bit of English. So knowing really important phrases that are applicable to you are very important. So one of them is if you are vegetarian or if you do not eat meat, saying like soy vegetariana, no carne. Those are words that that you're not going to use in a program like Duolingo, but that will be very important. If you have allergies, those are really important to note. Um, I love introducing myself. So, me llamo Samantha, which is my name is Samantha, and then soy de los Estados Unidos. That is like a phrase that I use pretty often. And then if you don't look like you're from Estados Unidos, I say nací en China. I was born in China, and that kind of helps clarify some things. But those are the phrases that I think I use the most in Latin America, other than "Hola, cómo estás? Por favor, porfa." Yeah.
That's great. And I think that greeting is important when you see someone and say, "Oh, buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches."
Sí.
And I love that. So remember, parents, you could say soy vegetariana or vegetariano or no carne. But if you love meat, you will say
Sí,
más
carne,
carne,
no.
por favor. Más carne, por favor. Y soy de los Estados Unidos. Excelente, excelente lecciones. Gracias, Samantha. Thank you so much for talking to me. I love our discussion. You are an amazing young lady, and I can't wait for what you're going to be doing next.
Gracias a ti.
Okay, hasta luego.
Nos vemos.
Hola, are you a parent looking for guidance on helping your elementary age children learn Spanish? Make sure to sign up for my free parent webinar, How to Give Your Elementary Age Children an Authentic Spanish Learning Experience at Home, even when you do not speak the language. The link to register is on the show notes. Hasta luego. Hola, muchas gracias. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found value and encouragement in this episode. It will mean the world to me to know how this podcast is impacting you. Por favor, please take a few minutes to let me know and leave a review. When you leave a 5-star review, it will help others discover the podcast. Do not forget to subscribe. See you soon. Hasta luego.